Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tomorrow will be September 11th. It'll be the 14th anniversary of the attack upon America by radical Islamist members of an organization called Al-Qaeda. Many of us remember exactly where we were when we saw those planes hit the towers of the World Trade Center. Many of us knew where we were when, I think it was United Flight 93 was featured some heroic members from everyday society attempting to wrestle control over the aircraft from these extremists. Many of us remember where we were when the plane hit the Pentagon. But I'm ashamed to say that I think even at the time when we did this, everybody was saying we're never going to forget this. We're never going to forget what happens when terrorism is unleashed in our country. And we're never going to forget the fact that we need to defend our country from folks who wish us ill. When we need to start waking up to the fact that when somebody says that they want to kill us, odds are that they are pretty sincere with their intent. Yet I stand before you today when up in Washington, D.C., they're considering a deal that's been brokered by our Secretary of State, John Kerry, and President Obama, called the Iran deal. And this Iran deal is enabling terrorists throughout the world. Matter of fact, if it's enacted, we're going to be the leading sponsor of terrorism in the world by opening up and releasing restrictions on sanctions that's going to flood Iran with $150 billion of new revenue. And I don't think that money is going to build Disneyland over there, folks. That money is going to be funneled into terrorist organizations throughout the world. It's going to be expediting the development of their nuclear program. The deal that's been put before us, called the Iran deal, has a lot of elements that should give our elected representatives up in D.C. pause. The deal, first of all, doesn't address the 4 American citizens that are currently being held hostage in Iran. The stuff that is in it is filled with loopholes. It doesn't allow any surprise, anytime, anywhere inspections. The deal would fuel a Middle East nuclear arms race, making the world less safe. And even if Iran's leaders abide by this agreement, the regime will be dangerously close to having nuclear weapons. Furthermore, the deal allows Iran to continue development and the construction of intercontinental ballistic missiles. That provides a delivery mechanism for any nuclear bomb that may be developed there to be delivered here to the United States. Against this backdrop, the folks that we're actually dealing with over there to create this deal, the Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, predicted Wednesday that Israel, one of our allies, our only allies in the Middle East, will not exist in 25 years. Israel's known as the little Satan by the folks in Iran. Guess who's known as the great Satan here in America? And if you want to know how far this extremist view and this concern, or why this is such a concern, in the Iran Constitution, I don't know how many of you guys realize this, but in their preamble it states that it should provide the necessary basis for ensuring the continuation of the Islamic Revolution at home and abroad. And that one of the goals of the Army and the Revolutionary Guards is to fulfill ideological mission of jihad in God's way that is extending the sovereignty of God's law throughout the world. That jihad has explicitly been talked about in context of the destruction of not only our nation, but the nation of Israel. And yet our leaders up in D.C. are letting this go by without a peep. Well, not all of them. But they're not even voting to take this issue up, and they're not even treating this as a treaty right now. This is a treaty, but they call it the Iran deal, but it's actually a treaty between the United States and other partners and Iran. And we're not subjecting it to the Article 2, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution with the advice consent, which requires a 2/3 majority to support it. So I urge my colleagues to urge our elected representatives, Senator Gary Peters and Debbie Stabenow, to vote no on this deal. Right now they've voted support.